You're welcome back, and as always, so views and comments are welcome on this program. Look for us on Facebook and Twitter at Joy News on TV. Drop your comments with the hashtag The Pulse. We'll be glad to share your thoughts with the rest of the world. Now, the international media has watched keenly as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump from the Democratic and Republican parties campaigned vigorously to earn their nominations. Both candidates made a series of promises, especially on issues of foreign policy, with Mrs. Clinton promising to build on her experience as Secretary of State to maintain a cutting-edge military, strengthen American alliances, defeat ISIS, and enforce the Iran nuclear agreement, among others. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump's foreign policy has left political analysts skeptical as he declared that more countries should be allowed access to nuclear weapons, and the promise that he will authorize the building of a wall on the Mexico border to curb illegal immigration. And Mexico will foot the bill, mind you. That's for Donald Trump. But which foreign policy best suits the African continent as a whole, and Ghana in particular? Joining us in the studio is the lecturer at the Department of Communication at Legon and a political enthusiast, I must say, Dr. H.S. Kanko, a keen watcher of U.S. politics. Thank you so for joining us here on the program. Just to set the tone for this conversation, I just want you to watch some of the key words of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the run-up to this elections for the United States. As for the two frontrunners in the U.S. elections, Hillary Clinton you saw earlier, and Donald Trump just before you saw my face just a few seconds ago. Now let's speak to Dr. H.S. Kanku for more on this. Once again, you're welcome to the program. For these elections, someone will sit in his own and say, why should us in Ghana worry about American politics? Why should we worry about it?
Actually, there is a lot of reasons why we should be worried. In the preamble to your program, you made a very important point that when the U.S. coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. I believe that is a euphemism that exemplifies the role of the U.S. in the global system. After the end of the Cold War, we now have only one unilateral power in the world, which is the United States. And we know the stake that the U.S. plays even within the international system. You take the United Nations, for instance, and we know that the United States is a very big funder of the UN. Now, if a US president comes in and has particular policies, for instance, during the George Bush administration, they were anti-abortion, and so they held funds that were responsible for the UNFPA. Now, when I know that the UNFPA plays a huge role in sexual reproductive health, in women's rights, in adolescents' rights, in all across Africa, they have an office right here in Accra. You know, if they don't have funds to do their work, then it means that
it's affected.
Yes,
but again,
exactly.
even for that quarters, the flip side to it is that even in that era, you had a lot more support also going in other sectors for Ghana from America in Bush's era, isn't it?
That is true. But what I'm saying is that the fact still remains that the responsibility or the sole deciding factor for where they put their money is it still goes back to who the president is at that particular time. So that's one.
Okay.
Two, if a president comes in, for instance, and decides that they want to stop certain bilateral and multilateral agreements. So I'll give you an example. So Donald Trump, for instance, he is an isolationist. He's a nativist. He's a protectionist. He's probably going to come and he's the kind of guy who will do away with AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Now that's going to have a huge effect for a lot of our farmers, our cashew farmers who export to the United States, for instance. And then when it comes to global foreign affairs, right? So let's take this year, the decision that was made by President Mahama to accept get more detainees. Now that was purely a decision by the US president. President Obama was determined to return the Guantanamo Bay detainees before he left office.
However unpopular that decision may be for most Ghanaians.
Absolutely. But because the US president had determined that this is what he was going to do, he made sure that he did it. All right, and now we have to get more detainees in our hands. So the fact of the matter is that whether it comes to foreign policy, whether it comes to healthcare, economic trade, and all of that, the decisions that the United States makes always does have an impact, you know, for the rest of the world.
Okay, and especially for Ghana. So zeroing in on Ghana and with the explanation you've just given us, will it make more sense for Africa to support Hillary becoming president or Donald Trump? Put you on the spot now, sir.
Right, no, that's okay. I mean, if you look at the cold facts, all right? So let's take a step back and then look at the cold facts. Let's look at the two candidates. We have Secretary Clinton, who is an internationalist. Look at her background. This is somebody who has had a very close relationship with Africa dating back to her years as a first lady. You know, I remember when the Clintons came to Africa in way back, I believe that was probably 97. I was in high school in Pesek. You know, I was one of the guys selected to go stand on the street and wave flags.
Oh.
You know, so she has a history dating back to that. The Clintons have a good relationship with Africa. They have a good relationship with Ghana. And so you would imagine that this would be a president who would be more in tune to or more sympathetic to Africa. She believes in international trade. She was a huge supporter of the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, you know, that President Obama signed. On the flip side, you have Donald Trump. You know, this guy is a protectionist. He's an isolationist. He does not believe in international trade whatsoever. So you would imagine that if he comes to office, he will be more reluctant in promoting bilateral and multilateral agreements between Ghana and the EU. In fact, if we are not lucky, we'll probably cancel some of the agreements that we have. And we know that we are in an international system. We are living in a world which is becoming more global. The world is a global village. We've heard this over and over again. No country is an island into itself. We are moving towards more interconnection, interrelationships, in order to see how best we can forge together for global peace, global security, global development. Now you have an American president who comes and says he's not interested in that. Can you imagine what will happen? You know, both on the security front, on the health front, and on the economic front. You know, so these are just examples. Now you have Donald Trump again saying that Africans are lazy, and that all they know is they can do is to have sex, you know, and that the leaders are corrupt.
Is it also because we too often walk to America with cap in hand asking for arms and aid?
Well, so you look at another candidate like Secretary Clinton. She says the relationship between Africa and the U.S. should be one of a partnership, not one of dependency. So again, we have a candidate who is more interested in interacting with Africa on an equal playing field.
Okay, Doc.
We have another one who is more interested in perpetuating a more unilateral and hegemonic, you know, relationship with Africa.
Quite some interesting words you use here. But to wrap up the conversation, sir, you still haven't answered my question. Who will be the best president for Africa? I mean, the best American president to serve America's interest, to serve Africa's interest.
Okay, so see, from the analysis,
Hillary or Donald Trump.
From the analysis that I just gave, I think that it should be easy for people to deduce that Hillary Clinton would probably be more sympathetic towards Africa. But the best thing that Africa can do for itself will not come from the United States. It will come from Africa itself. You know, got to give that caveat.
Okay. All right. So as we keep our eyes still on the developments in America, we will be doing more of these analysis and discussions on the key issues that will come up in the elections for America and what they will have in terms of implications for Africa and for Ghana. Doc, I want to say thank you for joining us today.
It was a pleasure
on the program, sharing your thoughts with us on how the American politics and Uncle Sam's Code may just affect all of us in the end. We'll pause now for sports. But after sports, tell you what, Mr. Mugabe is not happy with you. He says, enough, you play too much. We'll bring you those details after the break. Stay with us.